Okay, so one of the questions I frequently get asked is it easy to do? Is it easy to set up on online selling? And what happens once you've done that? Does the money just start rolling in? Can you go off and holiday somewhere? And yeah, well, I mean, the answer is yeah. I mean, it's easy to do, but it's hard work. It's not. You've got to put the hours in, and especially initially, for the first couple of years, you need to put the hours in. One of the things that you can do to make life easier for yourself is use fulfillment centers. They basically will fulfill the order for you and dispatch it to the customer, and some of them will deal with your returns as well. They'll deal with all of that side of things, so you can focus on getting more products or the creative side of things. Okay, so you focus on that. They handle all the distribution and so on, and returns. Okay, the only problem is that obviously you need someone that's good, that's in tune with your way of thinking, whether it's quality or customer service. Okay, if you're on Amazon, they will actually, you can have fulfillment by Amazon. Certain products do really, really well with fulfillment by Amazon, and you should seriously think about those. Okay, or think about using fulfillment by Amazon. The positives of using fulfillment by Amazon is that you suddenly get a lot more exposure because obviously Amazon wants to drive sales. Okay, so that's a positive. However, you've got to be aware that Amazon sometimes will sell the same product themselves. You may be in the long run digging a grave for yourself, because they may decide to just sell the same product, and fulfill it themselves. So just be aware of that. On eBay, they don't do any sort of fulfillment service that I'm aware of personally, but they do. There are distribution networks, and they do click and collect and so on, which is really useful and handy. So click and collect service, you basically send it to Argos or send it to some retailer, and then they'll hand it over to the customer. So you could do that. Personally, didn't really like the idea of click and collect. Wasn't sure about the sort of customer service that would be that customers would have at the other end. I'm a bit old-fashioned. Didn't really think that was a way for me. The fulfillment centers are completely different, I guess. Some of you would argue it's the same thing, but they are, from my own experience, they are a lot more keen to sort of keep you on and look after your customer base. It's a self-serving sort of interest. Okay, so they want to make sure that you're happy as well, because obviously you could take your stuff and that's it. One of the problems that you might find if you have fulfillment by Amazon is that if something goes wrong, I've had friends who are sellers who have said it's been an absolute nightmare to get their stock back. So for whatever reason, they've fallen out with Amazon, or something's happened, or Amazon wants more information, or Amazon wants to verify them again. They want something comes up, or a customer makes a complaint about whether the product is actually genuine or not, and then things get frozen, your account gets frozen, or whatever, and your products are stuck with Amazon. Trying to get those products back is a nightmare, and then obviously Amazon will charge for for that service. So you could be out, you could have no stock to sell elsewhere, and you're paying for a service that you're essentially not getting. So that's one of the downsides. But most people I've talked to, the experience that I've had, fulfillment by Amazon is on the whole good. And I would, if you think if the product is something that could be handled by a fulfillment center, I would definitely encourage you to use fulfillment by Amazon. All right, it'll make your life a lot easier, and it will make your uh, uh, make your make you as a seller more visible to customers, because Amazon will be trying to push you up so that that you generate sales, so they get their commission as well. Okay, so that's actually what happens. So it is a win-win situation for usually, if the products are good quality and so on, and your verification is good, then fulfillment by Amazon on some products can work really well. Okay guys, so a lot of people have said, what's the difference between eBay and Amazon in terms of how you get started? Well, I found it easier to get started on eBay, and I think most sellers would agree. With eBay, you're basically putting your own ad, you type up your own sort of wording. You can copy other ads that are out there. I never did that. I always used to sort of touch them up, gear them for the sort of customers that I wanted to attract. So you can type up your own ads. Pictures, you can usually use pictures supplied from manufacturers, although it's probably best to sort of call them, ask them, tell them, do you mind if I use this picture? They'll usually say no. They may want to know what it's for, and if you tell them you want to use it online, they're normally fine. Some of them will even send you USB sticks, or they'll send you CDs or whatever, or pictures, just email pictures through to you. So if you don't have pictures, you can just get pictures sent to you from one of these sources. Be careful about getting pictures, images off Google or anyone else, because they could belong to someone else, and you cannot just use that picture yourself just because it's on there. So just because it's online, it doesn't mean that you can use that picture. You've got to get consent, and it could be copyrighted, all right? And you don't want to land yourself in hot water with that. So pictures you can get from a manufacturer usually, or you can create your own pictures. Take some nice pictures, and do spend time taking good pictures. You take a great picture, the item will sell. You take a naff picture, it won't sell. Okay. Unless it's at a nice sort of at such a cheap price that people don't really care. Okay, so if you want to beat the competition, get some nice pictures, and if you've got a nice steady hand, that's great. If you use an SLR camera, really that's good, and you can also use a macro lens. 100mm macro lens would sort of suffice. Okay, get some good lighting, natural lighting if you want. Natural kind of works quite nicely, but obviously just be careful with shadowing and so on that might appear. So or just go down to a studio, or you can sort of these days you can go to certain locations where you can actually use their own equipment. They'll sort of do it all for you, or they'll let you do it using their own equipment. So these have popped up recently as well, so you can use those. They weren't around when I first started, but they are around now, and and it helps. Okay, so these days with cameras and everything, smartphones and whatever, they're all getting better and better. I personally like to use a good camera and a good cameraman to do things. Okay, I'm not using one today, but when I'm doing my work stuff, then I do. Okay, right. So eBay or Amazon, which one of those is easier to start with? Well, I've said eBay. Which one, eBay or Amazon, is going to get you more sort of customers? Well, that depends on the product. It depends on how you set up your page as well. There are different sort of customers on these. eBay tends to have sort of everybody from the very posh to people that really haven't got a lot of money at all, and just after a deal, or just after what they can afford, basically. All right, so you've got to cater for a bigger one. Amazon tends to have sort of a mid to I would say more sort of mid sort of customer. So your average sort of customer that you would sort of see walking up a high street, they would tend to have a lot more of those. Okay, in terms of orders, I would say my own experience with the products I sell, Amazon definitely was a far better in terms of profit and sales market than eBay. I started it later, but I did so much better on Amazon. That had something to do with the way the search engine works, the way the keywords I put in into it. It worked really well. So if you spend the time with Amazon and you put all the words that people might think of or associate with your item, and you plug those in, they will come up every time that customer looks for them. I did do the same sort of thing with eBay, but it was a lot harder. And they didn't always come up. I know this because I searched them myself, and they sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. You know, so I don't know why, but the search engine isn't quite as good. In terms of sort of printing your orders out, Amazon is so much easier. That's what I found with the products I was selling. Really easy to sell. It prints out the order. You could do whatever you want with it. You can sort of you can import it into other things. No issues really. eBay, a little bit more difficult. The customers on eBay would. This is what I found, and again, this could be to do with the sort of products that I was selling, but I found that there were more sort of issues with what the customer had put on the address in terms of address, so that there would be errors with the inputting of their own address into eBay. That would be an issue for me. Printing it wasn't as easy. Printing it in the format I wanted to have it printed in wasn't as easy as it was on Amazon, and I got lower sales overall and profit from eBay. Okay, now again, I must stress that's my own experience. Now, and it could just be the products that I sell. I do have a wide range of products, and and I also must stress that some products do sell better on eBay than on Amazon, and that's why I'm on both. So I'm not actually saying do this or do that. I'm saying do both, but do both if you think that that's going to give you access to more customers. The other thing that I need to mention is that some of the customers on eBay will shop from Amazon as well. I get loads of emails saying, I bought this from you from eBay, and then they've bought it again from me from Amazon for whatever reason. So they do tend to do that. Don't assume that eBay customers are eBay customers and Amazon ones are Amazon ones. That's not the case. These days people sort of shop on both, really. Okay, and it just depends on sort of what's happening. And I've had some really great days on eBay, and I've had some really great days on Amazon. My best days that I've had profitability wise were definitely on Amazon. Okay, not on eBay, on Amazon. But that's probably the product that I was selling, probably the product, or it could just be that Amazon's a better engine or has got better visibility. I don't know. Okay, I found that Amazon was a lot easier, a lot slicker as well, in terms of when I was inputting data. It was so easy to do that on Amazon, and if I needed to sort of do similar sort of listings, that was very, very easy to do. So I was up and running quite quickly. The biggest downside, I think, with Amazon is more to do with the way Amazon as a platform operates. Now, a lot of you probably don't realize this or may not know this, but Amazon is actually it's a catalog, really. And so if there's already a product that's on sale, you can't just go in there and just create your own listing unless it's a unique product that's not already on there. So, okay guys, so another question I frequently get asked is what do you do with other sellers that are competing on price? I mean, is there anything that you can do? Well, again, the answer is yes, there are certain things. I mean, obviously, you can drop your price, you can just make sure that your service is second to none. I've sold products that are a lot more expensive than other sellers are selling for the same item, simply because the quality and the service that I'm providing was second to none compared to what my competitors were sort of giving. So don't always just drop your price once when you see other sellers doing that, coming in at a lower price, because it doesn't always mean that customers will simply shift to them. Sometimes customers will write to you and tell you, I've seen this at this price, can you do anything? And if you write them a nice polite letter explaining why and so on, 7 to 8 times out of 10, they'll actually go with it. They'll actually say, you know what, I'll buy from you. You're more expensive, but I'm actually going to buy from you because your explanation of why your price is more than your competitor, sits comfortably with me, and I'm prepared to give you more money because of what you've just told me. And it's good. It doesn't always work, but it works with most intelligent people. They'll turn around and say yes, they can. And for most people who can afford to, they'll say, you know what, I don't mind. I'll pay more because I'm going to get something. I'm going to get this out of it. So it is good. It is good. And of course, there are other things that you can do. You can do freebies. You can throw in freebies. If you can, you've got to be careful with Amazon what sort of freebies and sort of eBay. So obviously, there are certain restrictions on what you can and can't do. But you can give your customers little extra things as well that just make you seem a nicer person to deal with. Now, freebies don't necessarily mean free stock or something. Freebies can be lots of different things. It can be anything. I mean, from sort of gift wrapping the item to making it look really good, presentation wise and so on, having it in a nice box or whatever, to actually giving them stock that maybe has got sort of extra that you've negotiated and the manufacturers put in extra items in, so it was something they were not expecting, but they just got an extra bit from buying from you. So I sometimes do that. Manufacturers sometimes have like specials that they do, and I'll try and every time I'll sort of say, do you have any of those special packs or those special offers ones that you do, and I'll get them at the same price as a normal pack, but there's things that are sort of not that the manufacturer doesn't normally it's not a regular thing that they do, but just a promotional thing, and I get that stock. And I send it over, send it to my customers. They weren't expecting it, and they're delighted because they just got extra bit that they weren't expecting. Okay, so we all like a little bit extra, and especially if it's something that we really use every day or really like. That's nice. That's good. Okay, so you can compete with with other sellers. It can be difficult competing on price. You can go back to manufacturers. You can sort of say to them. You can go back to your manufacturer or supplier, and you can turn around and you can say to them, is there anything you can do price-wise and whatever. Sometimes they'll go for it if it's a quiet period for them. Usually that's the best time to strike when everyone else is away on their holidays and it's really quiet. Talk to the manufacturer or your supplier and just say to him, if I buy some now, is there anything you can do? And you might be able to get a really good price. I've done it a few times. And just bought stock whilst all the other sellers were on a holiday, and I just made the call before I went on a holiday and got the stock just in time for when everyone got back, and the stock was ready, and it was a slightly better price than what I would have got if I'd made that call a month or so later. So timing is quite key in sort of your buying, okay? And obviously I don't need to tell you, don't settle for the first price the supplier or manufacturer gives you. Don't assume that price is set in stone forever. The price fluctuates all the time, so keep sort of keep asking. One day they may turn around and say, yeah, okay, all right, we'll drop it, for you this time round, and that's it. You know, that's good. And also just find out when they do their price increases. It's usually January with some manufacturers. Others have it in April, sort of the financial year. So just find out when those price increases are likely to happen, so that you can actually be prepared, so you can buy, you know, just before that price goes up, you can just stock up a little bit, and that gives you a few more months of nice sales and a nice margin just before prices sort of go up again. No one likes a price increase; they are inevitable, you know, in most things in life. But what you don't want to do is scare your customers away by having huge, you know, price increases. Now, one of the things that you also need to be aware of is that sometimes manufacturers will just completely take the piss or whatever, and just out of the blue increase their prices, not just by a small amount but by a huge amount. Sometimes with some justification, sometimes with no justification, and you've got to be prepared for that, and it can put people out of business. Okay, so just be aware of that. So you've got to always, the key is, I think in online selling, unless you're producing your own product, try and have as wide a wide a base as possible, so that if one manufacturer or one supplier lets you down, you know, you don't just fall. Try not to have your business running solely on one or two or three really good lines, and that's try not to have your business running on just one good line. Try and have it on as many as possible. You know, that's far better for you, because then you've got a bit more of a steady ship. And if something happens, a manufacturer goes bust, or they close down, or there's a fire, or there's a flood, or they decide to hike up their price, you're not going to go out of business overnight. All right, so it's really important that your base is as wide as possible. All right. Initially, when you first start out, that might be quite difficult to do, and you might be thinking, you know, you might want to take small tentative steps. But as soon as you start to, you know, see the business grow and so on, try and make that base as wide as possible. Try not to have it so that one manufacturer is actually who you're working with, and you know, and everything relies on what they do and what they say. All right. One of the other things that I have done or considered is buying a share, or buying the actual manufacturer out, or trying to buy the supplier out. You know, trying to take over basically, and sort of gain more control that way around. Okay. Other things that you can do in terms of how to improve sales and so on. Well, one of the most sneaky ways of sort of improving sales, especially when you know a line is quite limited. So it's a limited line a manufacturer that has made. Only a certain number. After they're gone, no more is going to be produced. Well, if it sells well, if it's doing really well, check what the quality is like. If the quality is consistently high, and you've got no doubts that the quality is going to be any different with the rest of the stock that you buy, then you might want to consider just buying a whole lot. You know, obviously, work out whether or not you can sell it on other platforms. So, for example, if you've bought it for Amazon, can you actually sell it on eBay? If there's a problem with Amazon, or something happens with your account, or it gets frozen, or you have to go through verification again, or you know, or they don't like you, or a customer makes a complaint and they have to investigate that. Just you know, if you think a stock is good and the quality is good, then be sneaky about it. Buy the whole lot, then the other suppliers can't buy it. You're the only one that can sell it. You can set your own price. Don't get too greedy, and then you'll sell it, and you'll be able to sell that and make a really neat, nice profit margin. You know, from that particular line. I've done that so many times. You know, things that I've seen that have sold well, really well, and then the manufacturer said, you know, they're going to stop making that because they're moving on to something else. And I've just said to him, you know what, just tell me how much more of that stock you have in, in the warehouse. They've told me, and I've ended up buying the whole lot. But when I've done that, what I've done is I've actually said to them, right, okay, I'll buy the whole lot, but if there's any problems in the next 3 months, 4 months, and in terms of quality or anything, I can return the whole lot, and you're going to pay to pick it up, and you're going to refund me in full. And if they've agreed to it, some don't, but 9 times out of 10 they do, because of the amount that I'm buying. If they agree to it, that's it. You get that in writing. You buy the stock and you take it from there. Okay. If you don't have a lot of money to be doing this, I mean, obviously, banks, you can approach them, borrow from those. You can, family, friends. You could use 0% credit cards. That would be a bit more different though, because that could come under your own sort of personal banking, and affect you personally. But if you've got no other if you've got no way of sort of financing things, 0% cards, take the risk, take the hit. I've done it. Loads of other sellers have done it. 0% card could be just the thing. So you buy the stock on 0%, have it for for a year or 2 years, no interest to pay, and you've got a bit of time there to sell your stock. And if anything happens, you've still got a bit of time to pay it back. Okay, but just make sure you've made a note, and and that everything's okay for tax purposes as well. Okay, so if you are going to do that, just do it, but just be careful on how you do that sort of thing. Okay, and that you keep all your paperwork, and it's all going to be fine. Don't get yourself into too much debt as well. You need cash. You don't want to have too much debt hanging on your head, because, like I said, things can go pear-shaped. They can go pear-shaped quickly on Amazon. They can go pear-shaped quickly on eBay, with other sellers sort of flooding in all of a sudden. Maybe sellers that you'd never heard of suddenly deciding to sell. Okay, or it could even be the supplier that's supplying you that suddenly decided they want to go and sell on Amazon or eBay. All right, so sometimes they're not on there. Sometimes the supplier or the manufacturer's not on there, and then they decide, actually, you know what, we're going to try eBay or Amazon ourselves, and they may do that, and they don't always come in and have their own name, the usual name that you might be aware of. It could be a completely different name that they've used, a nickname or something, but when you look into it and you look at the address and so on, then you soon realize it's actually that manufacturer or the supplier that you're dealing with, and that's a problem, because obviously they can undercut you if they wanted to. So just be aware of that. So don't take any huge unnecessary risks, and if you do take any risks, make sure you've got plenty of time to put things right if things go wrong. Okay, and by that what I mean is, like a 0% card for 2 years, or 2.5 years if you can get one of those. Okay, if you've got good credit rating, and but only buy good quality stock that you can sell, and that you've bought at a price that you think is good enough for you to be able to sell it. And if other sellers drop their price, that within time they'll have to increase them for whatever reason, and you're back on the ball again and up and running again. Okay, so sometimes other sellers will drop their price, they'll come in, they'll dump loads of stock, and they'll just want to get rid of it as quickly as possible, get the money as quickly as possible. They just want to make a little bit of money out of it. But it's frustrating for you, and the thing I would suggest you do is just just take a bit of time out. Don't just quickly change your price, because sometimes it's only going to last a week or two, the price that they've dropped it to, and if you drop yours too, they may just keep it a lot longer than a week or two, and all of a sudden the price is permanently low for very long periods of time. Which no one can survive on. So be careful. Don't just quickly get into a competition with pricing and so on if you can't afford to. And it does lower the price overall on the market, and it can make it unsustainable for you and for everyone else. Okay, so sometimes holding out and just sort of waiting, giving things a month or so, or a week or so, and then reassessing whether or not you need to do anything price-wise is actually better. Okay. Now, some of you have said to me, you've encountered the same sort of problems as me on Amazon or eBay. You've been selling for a while, and then suddenly tons and tons of sellers flood in, and they flood in because Amazon's alerted them to your sales volume or whatever, and the sales ranking of that particular product, and you've kind of asked, is there anything you can do? Well, yes, there is. There's loads of things that you can do. Okay, you've got to be smarter. You've got to be smarter than the staff, or not smarter than the staff. You've got to be smarter than the techies of Amazon. All right, and what I mean by that is that obviously it's a software program. Obviously it's running. So you've got to think about what is actually happening, what actually goes on. How do these sellers sort of flood in? How are they flooding in? What's happening? All right, if you know what's happening, you can stay ahead of the game or ahead of the pack. You can introduce products. You can be in. You can sell. You can sell loads of them. You can be out before all the other sellers come in and start dropping the price and competing against one another. Okay, if it works, you could stay on for a bit longer, but make sure that you've got rid of most of your stock before they all start flooding in and sort of bringing the margins down to levels that you can't afford. Okay, so but you've got to think about what's actually happening on the system. Now, I can't tell you how to do this because some of it is sort of borderline, can it be done, can't it be done, but there are ways to stay ahead of the techies at Amazon. It's worked every single time. It was extremely frustrating for me initially when I first saw all these sellers sort of flooding in and selling the same products. I could not compete against them. They were really big players. Huge warehouses, able to sort of buy things really, really cheap, far cheaper than I could ever do, and from suppliers that were supplying me, but were just not prepared to give me the same sort of price. So, but there are ways of getting in, offloading as much stock as you can, quality stock, really good margin, getting out before everyone else sort of gets stuck in. Okay, but you have to start being smart. You got to think like a fox. You've got to outfox those techies, and you've got to outfox everyone at Amazon. And I've managed to do it, and I've stayed ahead every single time, and I'll keep staying ahead of the game and of the pack. Okay, so just think about what's actually happening, and you too can make sure that every time there's any you introduce products, you're always way ahead. Okay, and before the price sort of flattens out completely and there's nothing to be made out of it, you'll be out and gone, and you'll be holidaying somewhere nice whilst the rest are working out what their losses are. Okay, so keep smiling, keep thinking, and be smart. That's the key to online selling. Be smart, and take risks, but take calculated risks, and only do things that you can afford to do. Don't do anything if you can't afford to do it. Okay, so some of you have asked me, what are the problems of selling on eBay or Amazon? Well, there's quite a few. On Amazon, setting up is quite difficult to do. You have to go through quite a rigorous, lengthy process of verification. There's toing and froing going on, and you need ID papers. If you're going to be professional, you're going to need utility bills. You're going to need things with your address on it. A recent utility bill. You're going to need a passport or driver's license as well. Photo ID. You're going to need bank statements as well. You're going to need to tell them whether you're a professional or not professional. And you're going to need some sort of tax reference number or something, or a VAT number, You're going to need something like that basically, or a letter from the tax office. Okay, that's to get up and started. So that's a problem with Amazon. eBay, much easier to get started. You don't really need as much information. They have a smaller sort of verification process, and tied in with sort of PayPal usually. Okay, so eBay's a lot easier to set up, and I would suggest anyone that wants to start up with eBay first, then move on to Amazon if you start to like it, and then things should go, should grow basically once you're on both sites. Other issues. Well, Amazon, there's another problem with Amazon. The other problem that we have with Amazon is that it is a catalogue, and that means that you're not allowed to start selling a product on there that's already been sold. By that, what I mean is that if it's already listed, you've got to list your name and your details against it. You're not allowed to stick another picture in and information in unless it's a completely different product, or if it's a variation, you've also got to ask or actually add it on as a variant as opposed to a new listing. Okay, now that makes it easier because basically if it's already there, you just add your details and you're competing on price, okay, or service. Okay, if you're not established, then you're going to find it difficult initially, because Amazon won't have any sort of idea of what your service level is like, and you're going to have a lot of other people, a lot of other sellers who've been there for a lot longer, providing very good service, usually, not always, but usually, and you're going to be competing with them, trying to get people's attention. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. Some listings have got 20, 30, maybe more sellers, all competing for the same thing, and the prices can vary wildly. It's a joke actually, between the prices. So you've got to think about the competition that's on there. You're going to think about how you're going to attract customers to you when no one knows about you, you've got no reputation, nothing, and you're competing for the same product. So you can't create your own listing or anything like this if it's already there. You've got to use the one that's already the existing listing, unless there's a problem with that. If there's a problem with that existing one, you think something should be done about it, then obviously contact seller support, and if they agree with you, they'll make some changes. But that can take time. Okay. If you're creating your own product, it's great. You can actually create your own product, get a photo, upload it, put some content, add the content, and that's your own product. But be aware that even if you're trying to sell your own product, there could be someone out there that will actually quickly copy that product and start to compete against you. So unless you actually trademark it in some way or register that particular product in some way, and it's quite unique, then expect competition to quickly flood in, and they will quickly tag your listings and start to sell the same sort of item. So the actual pictures, the listings, don't belong to you. They actually belong to Amazon, and the photos and everything all belongs to Amazon. So when you're actually uploading stuff, or doing it, you're actually saying anyone can use that content basically, and if they can sell the same product, exactly the same product, they can list against it. Okay, so you've got no control. That's the problem with Amazon. You can list a new product, and within months, loads of other people have listed against it. You've done all the hard work, and then suddenly you've put the advert, you've paid for the advert, you've paid for the photo, you've spent time producing the content and everything, and then suddenly wham bam, there's about 6 or 7 other sellers who've done nothing but tag your photo or your listing, and lo and behold, they're underselling you or selling at a substantially lower price. Okay, so just be aware of that, so your sales can sort of really kick off, or go through the roof, and then one day they could be sky high, and the next day they could drop completely, and you could be getting no sales whatsoever on Amazon, and that's because loads of other sellers have suddenly put their name or added their name onto your listing, and they reckon they can sell the same product as you're selling, basically. So just be careful about that. Now, one of the things that you may be thinking is, well, how's that going to happen so quickly? Well, one of the things that Amazon does, which is good for some sellers and bad for others, is that it will quickly, if you start doing really well on a product and it starts to sell very, very quickly, they will quickly tell other sellers who sell similar sort of products about the product you're selling, in terms of, what it's doing, its sales rank, how many sales it's had, and so on, and why, and for them to offer it. They'll be encouraging them to offer it, and if they do that, then obviously you're going to be competing against these people. All right, so just be aware of that, and your Amazon is working for you, but it's also kind of working against you, because it's alerting loads of other sellers. If you start to do well, if you bring something onto Amazon and sales rocket through the roof, every single person's going to know. You're not going to be able to hide that from other sellers. They're going to quickly flood in, and you're going to be competing on price and service, but mainly price when it comes to Amazon. And I say that because there's actually a lot of good sellers that are on there. There's a lot of people that take the time to make sure everything is right and customer service is right. So you are, you're going to have someone that's got a good mindset and wants to do well and wants to look after their customers, competing against you. So just be aware of that, okay? So with eBay, it does do something similar. It will alert you. It will tell you, what's sort of trending, what's doing well. That can work for you, or it can work against you. If you start doing really well, they could start alerting other sellers, and lo and behold, people start to flood in. That's why it's important to have your own website, because your own website will probably give you a more guaranteed sort of customer base and sort of loyal sort of customers in the long run. So you want to be building your own website and your own customer base in the background. Have eBay running, have Amazon running, and essentially your own website is actually the one that's bringing you the money long-term wise, and then Amazon and eBay will just be a bonus, basically. They're not, unless you're willing to sort of take hits on margins and massive hits and so on, and compete on every level. You're unlikely to be sort of dominating Amazon week by week, unless you do something like that, okay? Or you can negotiate with your supplier and get the price, rock bottom. Okay, so one of the other questions people ask me is that what's it like? What's the help like that you get? Well, I could tell you, I've had numerous phone calls with eBay team members. I've got very cross, I've got very angry, very frustrated. They don't listen, they tell you they're following procedure, they don't seem to understand. It's very rare that you can get anything sort of sorted through eBay. That's my experience. It's not everyone's experience, it's just my own experience. I do spend time, I do talk to them, I do try and I do listen, I do try and let them know what my concerns are. I do it in a very logical sort of sequence, so they can follow what the problem is or what the issue is. Do I get anywhere? No. Okay. Be it problems with their own platform, be it problems with customers, anything. Honestly, every single time I've had a problem, it's been an absolute nightmare trying to sort the issue out. I can probably count the handful, the times that things have been resolved to my liking, probably on just one hand, and that's in all these years of sort of trading on there. Okay, so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it. I'm saying go on eBay, but I'm saying it is a headache. Okay, I found Amazon a lot more professional. I found them able to resolve things. I found them keen to resolve things. And if you persevere, if you are definitely not in the wrong, they will help you. They will get you out of any pickle, and that is what you need. So they will look after you, but you've got to make sure, you've got to be, what you're saying has to add up, and obviously you've got to have given the best sort of service and done the best that you can. If you do all of that, they'll help you. All right. So I've not really had any issues there, and I can count the number of times I've had really good sort of resolutions, not on one hand, but probably on 3, 4, or 5 hands basically. So about 4 or 5 times the level of service that I've got, good service that I've got from Amazon seller support compared to eBay customer service team. Okay, and even on eBay sort of power seller and whatever, the higher sort of levels, I've still had poor service really in terms of getting things resolved, and they've been fairly straightforward. I've not really, it's not been something that I've caused or a problem that I've caused. It's just been issues with customers possibly, or software issues that have just not been resolved. Some of those issues, some of the software issues that I've had, honestly went on for months and months, and no regular sort of feedback or updates or anything like that from them. It just seemed to sort of they seem to say, yeah, we'll get things done, but nothing ever got done. Okay, all right. So that's my own experience. That won't be the experience of every seller that's on eBay. That's just my own personal experience. Okay. I don't know too much about Gumtree in terms of their sort of service levels. To be honest, didn't really have too much of a good sort of run on Gumtree personally. I didn't really think it was suitable for the products that I was selling. Gumtree. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just didn't sort of put enough time into it. But certainly my from what I saw of the products that I was selling, and initially, I just thought Amazon would be the right place for these sort of things. And with the quality and the service that I wanted to give, I thought that would be really the best place, and I was right. Okay, okay guys, so to increase your sales on Amazon, what I would recommend you do is use sponsored ads. Sponsored ads is basically an advertisement that will come up as customers are searching, and if they click on it, you get charged, and hopefully the customer will buy the product. Okay. Obviously Amazon will make a commission on this. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to use that, because my sales went or increased by 5 to 6 fold just by using it. So it's well worth doing. But if you're going to use it wisely. Spend some time. Think of the keywords that customers may use to refer to the goods that you're selling. Sometimes they use other brands, but they're actually not thinking of those brands. They're actually thinking of the products you're selling. So, for example, vacuum cleaner or Hoover. A lot of customers would sort of say, would call, some of the older customers anyway. They may call a vacuum cleaner Hoover, which is actually a brand. But just remembering that was the first brand that sort of came onto market, so they associate that with a vacuum cleaner. So basically, you want to think about other brands that possibly customers may use, and maybe put some of those keywords in. They can help identify your products. Okay. You don't want to overdo that, because obviously you don't want your products appearing on every single page that customers are looking at, and that's completely sort of irrelevant. So it's got to be a very good sort of match, and there's got to be a very good reason for you to do that. Okay. All right. So that's one way of doing it. Using sponsored products is a good idea, as I've said. What you'd have to do is bid for the space. Generally, Amazon will sort of give you an idea of what you should start your bidding at, okay, and then it's up to you whether you agree or whether you want to up it or make it a little bit lower, you know. I went a bit lower, it worked for me. Then another seller sort of decided to do the same thing, and so we were kind of competing, and sometimes their ads came up and sometimes mine came up. If I upped mine a little bit, then mine would come up, but then, you know, they could up theirs, they could up their bid, and so you could go round and round and round, and the price could go up. So I kept it quite low, and you know, didn't want to get too greedy and just have all my ads, so I just kept it as it was, and you know, and it's been going and it's been fine. So use the sponsored ads. Keywords, make sure you put your keywords into every single product, every word that you can think of that associates with your item, do it. That can be time consuming, but it's well worth it, and it reaps, you'll soon reap the rewards for it. Okay, if you don't do that, you know, your products aren't going to always show, or they'll show sometimes if the customer types in the correct thing, but they won't show if they don't. Okay, so I strongly recommend that. So sponsored products is a must. On eBay, never really tried anything like that. I did make a call to eBay, didn't really get very far. No one seemed to know how I could do that on eBay, so you know, the advertisement side didn't sort of work. Now remember, I make more money out of Amazon than I do on eBay, easily, and I started on eBay first, I went on to Amazon second. I knew Amazon would be the place for my products. It may not be the place for your products. eBay may be better, or Gumtree, or one of the others. Okay, so just think about where your customers could possibly be, or likely to be, and the best thing to do is actually have your products on as many sites as possible. That's the best way to do things. Okay, some days I have really good days on eBay, some days I have really good days on Amazon. Okay, some days it's kind of evens out, and I have, you know, sort of average on both, but that makes it a really good day. Okay, so try and get your products on as many websites as possible. Try and also set up your own website. That's going to be the best thing long term. If you want to do these things long term, you want to do online selling long time, you need your own website, definitely. Okay, everyone will tell you that. Okay, every other seller will tell you that. So, and the sooner you can get that set up, the better. But I would first sort of try things on eBay, try things on Amazon, and then maybe set up your own sort of site. Okay, just to see how things go. Okay guys, so to sell on Amazon, it's quite easy. You just look at the product that you've got, see if it's already on there. If it is, just add your name to the listing. Fairly straightforward to do. If you don't know how to do that, you just contact seller support. They'll guide you through it, but it's really straightforward. I managed to do it, and I'm not that bright, so if I can do it, you guys can do it easily. So if your product's not already listed, or if you're creating your own product, you need to have a barcode, basically, or a EAN or a GTIN number. If you haven't got one of those, don't worry, don't stress. You can use companies like GS1 UK. So GS1 UK, that's a really good company. I've used them, loads of sellers use them, never had any problems with their codes. And so basically you just give them a simple description of the item, and that's added against a barcode number, and you can use that barcode number, plug it straight into Amazon, or plug it straight into eBay. Okay. If you can't find the item on eBay or Amazon, if there's no barcode listed on the item, then you know, obviously you'll need some sort of barcoding before you can add it on. Either the product may have one already at the back of it, so just turn it over, see if it's there. If it's there, great. If it's not there, then again, GS1 UK. That's probably the best place to get registered with, and then you can sort of add as many products as you want on there. I say that I think there's they've got different sort of membership sort of structures. So if it's under 1,000 items, then it's a certain fee. Over 1,000, it's another fee. You pay something like you pay a joining fee, and then after that, it's just a yearly subscription fee that you pay. It's no biggie, especially if you've got quite a few items, and certainly if you're good, you'll recoup your costs easily. Okay, and if you've got a good product, if you maintain your standards, you're going to do well. Right, so a lot of people say to me, which is best? Is it eBay? Is it Amazon? Well, that's difficult. Some products sell better on Amazon. Don't ask me why, they just do. Others sell much better on eBay. Okay, my experience is that any product can sell on any site if it's marketed properly, and sometimes you've done something wrong, or you've not added certain keywords for searches. Those are quite important, because the keywords can sort of attract you. It can help when new customers are searching, or existing customers on the eBay customers are sort of looking for certain products. So sometimes they misspell words, or they don't know what they really want, but they kind of so they just give a general sort of word that could be a completely different product. So you've got things like I'll give you an example, like Hoover, which is a brand. A lot of people refer to vacuum cleaners as Hoover, because that was sort of quite a big brand in those days, and they still sort of call a vacuum cleaner Hoover or so. I know they do, because I do, and I always forget that that's actually a brand and not the actual vacuum cleaner, as it were. So they don't always do that, and I've come across other examples where people will sort of search under a brand name as opposed to the actual name of the item. So I'm not going to give you any more, because I'll be going through brands then. But anyway, I think you guys kind of sort of get the gist. Okay, so your keywords are quite important on Amazon. It is really Amazon, the search engine is really sort of up to scratch. So if they type that in and you've got that word, that customer's coming to you, straight to you. Okay, no one else. All right. So it takes time and it's laborious, but it's worth doing. Okay, and I used to spend hours and hours writing all the keywords I can think of, and sometimes the misspelt words. So things that I used to think could link up the products. Right. So other things that you need to be aware of when setting up eBay or Amazon. I'm mentioning those because they're really big. I mean, obviously there's Gumtree as well. There's other sites. But my experiences are not as if you're going to be serious about selling, maybe put them on everything, put them on Gumtree, put them on eBay, put them on Amazon, but it just becomes quite hard. It's once the orders start coming through, you're going to want to get rid of some of the sites, because it's not professional enough, it's not fast enough, it's not slick enough, it crashes too much, it's too slow or whatever. So or the customers are not up to scratch. You're not interested in that particular group. So that's up to you. But so I tried Gumtree as well. This talk is mainly about sort of Amazon and eBay, because they're the biggies. But Gumtree I've tried as well, so you might want to try those as well. Okay, and a lot of the things that I'm talking about will probably apply to some of those as well. So the first thing that I think you need to sort of work out is that if you're making your own product or creating your own product, that's fine, that's great, because really you're kind of dictating your own price, your own market, everything. Okay, a lot of us aren't that talented, aren't that creative, so a lot of us won't be doing that kind of thing. We'll be sort of buying from a supplier and so on. So if you're buying from a supplier, the first thing you need to get from them is some sort of a written note, just saying that it's okay for you to sell those on eBay or Amazon. Don't ask me why some of them wouldn't want that, but there are some. Well, I mean, obviously, some suppliers are, in inverted commas, a bit too posh, and they don't want to sell on Amazon, and they don't want to sell on eBay because they think that they're less posh. That's completely wrong, of course, and you get one thing I've learned about eBay and Amazon is that there's some very, very posh people on there. There's some very, very wealthy people that shop on those sites, so do not underestimate them. Okay, right? So if a supplier says to you, no, they don't want to supply you because it's it's not their kind of market or whatever, there's probably other reasons. It's nothing to do with the customer base, because the customer base is definitely there on Amazon and eBay. So get a written note from them saying that you can sell online. Okay, make sure it says sell online. You don't necessarily have to tell them at Amazon or eBay, but just make sure that they're aware that you're selling online. Okay, if you're going to be serious about this, I would probably actually tell them it's Amazon and eBay, because online could mean it's your own website, and they might be okay with that, but they may not be okay with the actual Amazon brand or the Amazon or eBay brand. Okay, so the next thing that you will need to establish is this supplier telling you the truth about everything? So sometimes what will happen is that the supplier will say to you something like along the lines of, and I've had this kind of stuff. They'll say, oh, we're exclusive, we're this, we're that, we only give it to certain people, we pick and choose who we give it to. What you need to do is do a little bit of research, not difficult. Type the words into Amazon, type them into eBay. You'll soon realize whether or not these products are exclusive or not, and how many other people are selling them. Okay, you'll be surprised at how many times I find that what the supplier says doesn't quite match up with what's actually going on in the marketplace. Okay, and sometimes they'll say they don't want them on Amazon or eBay, and actually the products are actually on Amazon and eBay already, so it'll be up to you whether you point that out or just join the ones that are already there. Anyway, what you also need to do is you need to sort of work out whether they're telling you the truth or not, in terms of is your distributor or your supplier, are they actually on eBay or Amazon? Now, that sort of stuff they don't necessarily want to tell you, and they don't want to tell you for a number of reasons. One is to do with price, because obviously they're trying to make the product look more exclusive, they're trying to make it look like it's a difficult product to get hold of, they don't want you to see the sort of prices that they sell at as well. So you get loads of suppliers that will say to you, oh yeah, the recommended retail price is this, let's say 10 quid, but you will soon find out that, or you may find out later, that they're actually selling the same product way below the recommended retail price themselves. Okay, now sometimes what they do is they don't actually list as their own, as the name of the supplier. They'll actually use some other name, and I've seen some really daft names being used, and they were actually suppliers to me, and I had no idea that these guys were actually my were the leading distributors, and also competing on eBay and Amazon. Now that causes a problem, because if they're already on there on Amazon and on eBay and they're selling to you, then obviously there's going to be problems, because at some point you're going to be competing with these guys who are obviously going to be able to undersell it, undersell you. So you want to know what is happening. Can you afford to be selling against them? What happens if they drop their prices? Because they will at some point. They'll run a promotion or they'll do something, and when things are quiet, and there you go. And I must point out that they will not usually be trading as a name that you would know or you'd be familiar with. It would be some silly name on eBay. Loads of people have got silly names on eBay, so it may not strike you as a supplier, but they could be huge. They could be absolutely huge. And I've seen it, and I've seen some really big names who I never ever thought would be on eBay or on Amazon, and they were on there. Okay, maybe that was just me being naive, but I'm here to tell you and to sort of try and help you, guide you through all of this process. Okay, so find out. You may need to do some research. The way I did it was I just sort of went through some of the names and the ones that kept coming up, and lo and behold, when I looked at some of the addresses, it was a lengthy process, but when I finally looked at some of the addresses and the address of the suppliers, they kind of matched up. So these guys are normally, not always, but normally they still use the same address, and that's how you kind of can find out. But there are one or two slick ones that I've come across who actually use a unit that's sort of further down the road, or even I had one that was in a different city, but it was still the same people, and they were just distributing on eBay and Amazon from a different city, a different warehouse. That's what they use, but essentially they were getting it at manufacturer cost plus a little and a huge markup, which they kept for themselves, and then sold off the rest as suppliers or distributors. So just be careful with that, because that can really be a problem. Okay, the other thing that you need to work out is is the quality of the products you're buying. Is it going to be consistently high? Now, what can happen is with some products, you'll get them, you'll look at them, they'll be fine. Then you get a batch, and it could be quite a big batch that will come through, and something's gone wrong in the manufacturing process, and a whole lot is rubbish, basically. Now, what you need also from these suppliers is you need to work out whether or not they're going to, what they're going to do with returns, basically. Are they going to return the products? So if you find a fault, are they going to take the products back? Are they going to pay to have them collected from you? Because that's costly. Are they going to pay for someone to come out, pick it up from you, take it back, and are they going to credit you in full, or are they going to do some sort of deduction or some silly maths game, take off a percentage or something? What is actually going to happen? And also, what are their terms? Do you have to return the goods within a certain period of time, or within a week, or a few days, or 48 hours? What's the sketch with returns? Now, you need to know that right at the start as well, because if you're buying tiny or cheap little items that are not very expensive, but there's thousands of them, then how the hell are you going to search through all of that? Who's going to go through all that stock? That's going to be time consuming to find out where the faults are and return those within that 48-hour window, or within a couple of weeks or so. Okay. Some give you a month, some give you 48 hours, some give you 24 hours. So you need to have a conversation with them right at the start and say to them, right, okay, if I buy these goods from you, I want to be able to return them 6 months later. Okay. Especially if the goods are low value. I mean, if you're only buying one or two, you might be able to go, obviously that's easy. You can just check those items off. If they've got a huge markup, huge margins, fine, that's great, but if you're buying thousands, you're going to need a few months possibly to, you're going to need quiet periods for staff to go through those items and work out which ones need to go back and which ones don't. And ideally you want a full refund for crap items. Okay, so have that conversation right at the start. So know if they're on the on Amazon or eBay. Know if your supplier's on them, and also when can you return the goods, and for how, make it as long as possible. Okay. Third thing is the third thing that you need to be aware of is your supplier will lie to you and tell you things like, this is the best price, this is the lowest price we go. We don't go any lower. The number of times I've heard that, honestly, as soon as a supplier tells you this is the lowest we sell it at, alarm bells should ring, and you should be aware that they're probably selling it even lower than that. Okay, I've come across so many situations where I've been told you know, this is the lowest we'll go. And I've even thought that I'd negotiated a good price, only to find out that someone else has been able to run a promotion or run something, and the price is absolutely, you know, they've managed to get these items for a lot less. Okay, and they're not necessarily, they're not imports. Don't fool yourself into thinking they're imports. They're not. They've probably negotiated in the same place as you, but they've just got a better deal. Suppliers will run different promotions. If they're quiet, they'll want to sell more. If they think you're big and you're ordering a lot, they'll give you more discounts. I mean, I've had suppliers sort of give me one price, and by, you know, in 6 months' time, it was probably about 20%, 30% less what I was paying for the same items, for the exact same items, 20 to 30% less, and in some situations about 50% less than what I actually paid 6 months earlier. And I'm not joking. And that was just because of volume of sales, because I built up a rapport, built up some dialogue, got a contact, and you know, and they got to see exactly what I could achieve in terms of sales and volume, and how quickly I could grow things. Okay, so you know, you need to establish whether or not that price is the best that you're going to get. Keep pushing for the lowest price, and also you need to know when your manufacturer is likely to increase prices, because you could be building this thing up, and then all of a sudden you could get an email or a letter, or in some cases no letter, no email, nothing. You'll just try and order and you'll be told the prices have gone up. When did they go up? Well, they went up in January. Really? Why wasn't I told? Well, that's when we always do it. Then next year, prices went up. Why have they gone up? Because the prices changed in April. Oh, really? Last year it was in January. No, it's always been April. That was the same supplier. That was a conversation I had with the exact same supplier. One year they changed their prices in January. Another year they changed it in April. You know, basically, you know, I was running out of stock and so on, and all of a sudden I was being hit with a massive hike in price. And in one case, I'd actually sold more than I had, and deliberately sold more than I had, because I knew I could get more quite quickly, but suddenly the price had just changed. And you know, suppliers will change, and wholesalers they'll change their prices willy-nilly as it suits them, really. You know, and just don't ever think that the price is set, or if you have a good run, you know, they might decide to hike their prices up because they can see that you're doing well, and they think that they can actually you know, make a little bit more out of you. So just always try and be, you've always got to try and be one step ahead with your suppliers and your distributors. Always one step ahead of them, okay? And by that I mean, unless you're producing your own goods, or you know, you've got you know, you're in the creative side or something, you're a painter, or then always be looking for other products, and you know, don't just rely on one supplier, okay? Do not do that. Do not rely on one supplier. And like I said, you know, the quality is quite sort of important as well, because you don't want returns. So you know, if the quality keeps changing, that is a problem. If the quality keeps changing, and sometimes you don't realise that there's a quality issue until a few months down the line, because that's only when you know, people have had time. Sometimes people are away on a holiday or whatever, and then they come back, or they've just not had time to email you, and then suddenly you get this email out of the blue saying, hold on a minute, I bought this off you and look at the quality of this. And they are genuinely, and they're true, and they're right, the quality had changed, you know. So just be careful about that. And also something else to be aware of is that some suppliers will turn around and even though you've got a fault, and there's an obvious fault there, you know, anyone can see, you know, anyone with a pair of eyes can see it. They'll turn around and they'll say something like, you know, the supplier will say, sorry, there's nothing wrong with this item. What do you mean there's nothing wrong with this item? Have you got no eyes? Can you not see that there's a problem there? You know, can you not see the defect? Just staring in the eyes. What do you mean? I'll show you. I'll photograph it and show you it. You know, and they'll still say they can't see it. Or they'll say it's only one or two. What do you mean it's only one or two? I sent you a whole box, the whole lot is affected. No, it's only one or two. I've had that conversation with these suppliers, so you've got to be really careful. So selling, if you're going to be doing any kind of online selling, you know, it depends what you're selling really, but if you're going to be doing it, you've got to have pretty thick skin, and you've got to be able to handle these sort of conversations with suppliers, you know, not just sort of take this, you know, just sort of let them take the piss completely. So you know, you got to be strong. You can't just sort of turn around and just say, yeah, okay, you know, I'll do this, because it's all money, isn't it? Okay, unless you're prepared to hold on to the stock. You know, I had one or two issues with one supplier, and I thought to myself, right, worst case scenario, I may have to keep these. You know, and guess what? You know what? I use those items, and it made no difference to me. I bought them cheap, and I use them myself, and you know, I was happy with you know, with what I'd be left. So I took the risk, and it paid off. I did well out of it. Okay, so if you're prepared to hang on to the items for a longer period, then that's different, you know. But if you're not, then have all these conversations right at the start, and it'll make your life so much easier. Okay, right. So we've looked at Amazon and eBay in terms of what to say to your suppliers, the sort of conversations you have. Try and drive the price down. Never assume that you've actually got the best price. You'll find out that someone else has managed to get a better deal. Often they'll save the best deals for very big established players. So you're not going to get that. Despite what the supplier tells you, you're not going to get that. Don't kid yourself. You have not got the best price. Okay, so you've got to think outside the box, and you've got to think to yourself, right, okay, so if I haven't got the best price, what else can I do? Well, if it's not price, you're going to need some, you know, it's going to have to be quality or speed of delivery or something else, you know, that makes, you know, customers come to you. And you know, I've sold the exact same products as some other sellers, and I've sold them at a much higher price, and customers have come to me, and they've come to me because they know they can consistently get quality products.